Hello everyone, this is Diane. I am ready to show you this really fun journal that I just completed. I did several videos showing where I was working on this, and it was really fun to make. There's a lot involved in it, a lot of different tags and cards and things that I put into it. So it is made with the Mrs. Coggs digital images called The Professional's Curious Illustrations. That is Mrs. Coggs Crafts on Etsy, and I will link that below. And I will show you what else is in this once we get into it. I used this really lovely Reader's Digest book cover with a burgundy and gold design. So I have a trim here that's burgundy and gold, and this fabric on the spine. It's a 2-inch spine. And the book is 5 1/4 by 7 3/4. On the cover, I used one of the large pictures from Mrs. Coggs Crafts. There are 4 sheets of designs, images, and there are 3 different sizes of cards. So there are 4 of the large cards. I put one on the cover and one on the front of each signature. I have this another embroidered trim here with a gold and olive green pattern. And I just decorated this one up. This is called the Gardener. So it's called the Professionals, and each of the images is a person who is wearing their wares, the tools of their trade and the fruits of their labors, or the creations that they make, and it just makes for some really fun images. You can see he's dressed in his fruits and vegetables and some vegetation, carrying the tools of his trade, and you can see the gardens behind him that I assume he created or worked in anyway, and there's just a little collage on it to represent the gardener. On the inside, I left the end paper because it was a really pretty burgundy color, and I added this gimp trim. There is a chipboard and some Tyvek underneath the fabric to give the book some good, I can't think of the word. Well, it's not going to come apart. The Tyvek doesn't tear, so this cover should be in good condition. And this is the original book plate that was over on this page in the original book, and so I just put that there. So here we have the first of the 3 signatures, and this is the goldsmith. He is backed with a piece of vintage ledger, so the ledger could represent the books that they use to record their work, their customers, their orders, payment due, and all that. So that's why they're backed with ledger. And since this is the goldsmith, I put this gold piece on him, and then I just used it on all of the others as a part of a collage. But there's a gold foil strip here, and this piece of jewelry that isn't really gold, but we'll pretend it's gold. And inside here it's a pocket, and I made this little tag with a gold cup and saucer from a painting, an old painting. It was pictured in a book, and then just a stamp, and this is just some script that I embossed with gold embossing powder. I took a tab that I cut out of just some cardstock and painted it with gold paint. So I had a lot of fun finding elements that would represent the artisan, craftsman, or seller. So along with these very serious and traditional looking, although fun and whimsical, the concept is whimsical, along with these older designs, I used pages out of a children's book with illustrations by Anita Lobel, and it's called On Market Street. And so it was alphabetical, and each of the letters of the alphabet were there to show one of the vendors, and their clothes are made up of the things that they sell. So I thought that that went really well with the Professionals, and it was a fun combination of this neutral palette with the fun and bright. So I hope I did an okay job of combining all of that together without being too overwhelming and mishmashy looking. So this is the flower cellar. So I put an image here. It's a copy of a vintage flower scrapbook piece that actually came out of a Victorian scrapbook. But this is just a digital image of it. And this lady is the glove seller. And I had quite a few glove images. This is from a book about fashion, and I loved it. It was just pretty white, and so I added some stamping to it to add some interest, and I love the way it turned out. And this is actually cut from a 1912 fashion magazine or catalog. 59 cents for those beautiful gloves. Value 75 cents, but bargain price 59 cents. I just backed it with some cardstock and sewed a little bit of crocheted lace, and it's a little journaling card. The other journal or digital kit that I used is from TLC Creates Vintage, and it's called Just the Basics Architecture. And I've said in several of my videos that I imagined all of these vendors selling their wares walking down the streets of this town where all these buildings are. I just did a plain stamp on some of the plain pages. I used the same stamp on all the pages where there was stamping. I used the same stamp because there's enough variety going on in here that I just wanted to keep something a little bit familiar and tied together. Alright, so over here I took the smaller images from Mrs. Coggs and made little pockets out of them. This is the tinsmith, and each little pocket has a shortened tag, coffee dyed tag, that has, that might help, I just turned the light on, that has something that represents the trade of the person. So this is the tinsmith, and I had this image of a little tin pitcher. And this is an embossing folder called Tin Tile to look like a tin roof, a ceiling, I mean, the tin tile ceilings. And then this one is the Glass and Lens Merchant. So I had these little pictures of, little drawings of these glass bottles, and I just painted them. This is tissue paper back here that was painted. This was left over from my seashell journals. And I just painted those bottles so that they look like colored glass. And then I attached a vintage optometrist lens to the tag. And I tuck it inside the pocket so it's, because it would hang down a lot and just flop around and bang on stuff. So along with the Glass Lens Merchant, I wanted to include this image. It's a beautiful picture from a book about a glass museum that's pretty local to me, the Corning Glass Museum. So this is, at least at that time, this was one of the pieces that's in the museum. Beautiful. So I just made a pocket out of that, and then to make a tag to put in that pocket, I used this image of clear glass water pitcher with 6 thin glass tumblers. I think they're beautiful. I would love to have that set. I used scrapbook papers that kind of had the bright and whimsical colors to go along with these pages, but I coffee dyed them and it toned them down, and I think everything works together. This is the orange cellar, and I had this vintage image from a old magazine. So I trimmed it to fit and glued it to some scrapbook paper. And then I needed something to put in there, and I didn't have any more orange images, so I was trying to think what to do. And I made this tag with my Cricut with this bright green. I used Distress ink on it, Vintage Photo, to kind of tone down the brightness of the green, orange reinforcement to kind of make it go with the oranges. And when you pull it out, You get a little bit of an orange effect here, of an orange with pieces, but this is a Celtic design. But I thought it made a really cool tag for the orange vendor. And I stamped these lines on it. I love that tag. Here we have the noodle seller. I did not make any embellishments for her. Because if they were opposite this architecture page, I didn't make embellishments for those pages, but I did make some exceptions, as you'll see. I love these architecture pages. They're so pretty. And you can, this one maybe not write on, maybe a few notes, but most of them you could write on the whole page if you wanted to. That's why I printed them front and back, because there's plenty of space for writing. Here's just a scrapbook paper, and I had no vendors here to represent, so I just glued on a piece of vintage note paper that came out of a little vintage binder and just did a collage. So there are a couple of these pages in each of the signatures. Here we have the musical instrument seller. And I just cut this out of a piece of a very old DCWV stack of paper about music. It was called Performance, that stack of paper. Is DCWV even a scrapbook paper company anymore? I haven't seen anything from them lately, I don't think. And I put this vintage music flashcard in there. And here's the lollipop vendor. And then, of course, we have the other side of the musical instrument guy, and I just glued a violin there. And now we come to the sculptor, and I found this image of a Degas ballerina sculpture, and I stamped on the background of that tag. This is a coffee-dyed tag that turned out quite dark, but you can see the stamping adds some texture to it, and I just had to cut the ballerina to fit the tag. And then here we have the utensil maker, and there are some spoons, and this is how you would get those dozen spoons free. Look at her shoes made of spaghetti. Anita Lobo must have had a lot of fun designing those costumes of these people. Just as I had a lot of fun coming up with embellishments for each of the different trades and crafts people. This is the locksmith, and I stamped some keys on the background. This is a chipboard lock that I painted with copper paint and then rubbed some vintage photo ink over it, or vintage photo distress paint, and then I rubbed some black StazOn ink on it to get that kind of a mottled kind of look. And then this is a real vintage lock cover. It's lightweight, and I got it at a flea market. I think there were 3 attached to the card, and I think I may have used, I think this might be the second one that I've used. And then I had this little charm of a lock that I just hung on a bulb pin there. Some of the little vendors, craftspeople, got a charm if I happen to have one. Here's the other side of the glove lady. Look at it's like a flounce around the bottom of her dress, which is all made up of gloves. And here is another actual image from the 1912 catalog. And the other side of the flower vendor. So I put another image of a flower there. And there's another vintage notebook page with just a little bit of collaging. The second signature starts with the wine grower. And I showed this in a different video, but I stamped this grape, bunch of grapes on vellum and painted it. And there's embossed cardstock there and some purple, very grape colored buttons. And then inside I had so much fun making this journal card. This is an image of a Victorian scrapbook image. I don't have the Victorian piece anymore. I think I sold it with some other Victorian pieces I was selling in my shop, but I had this, so this must be in one of my ephemera digital sets in my shop. And I just stamped different stuff on there and stenciled. Made a tab for it. This lady is the shoe seller. Now these are big boots right here. See, there's the foot and then the shank of the boot, and it's got this big full, like, I guess it reminds me of the Musketeers. So that makes up her sleeve. And this is an actual image from the 1912 catalog. And so is this. Again, I did some stamping on the background. And this is the ribbon seller. The fine tableware merchant. I cut this out of a book about art, so this was in an old painting. And the lamp maker. I did not have anything for lamps, so I just stamped some light bulbs. This is the wig seller, and in some of my vintage magazines I actually found some hair switches and bangs, artificial heads of hair to go along with the wig seller. So I think this was from an 1800s magazine. And you'll see another one on the other side of this picture. The vegetable seller. On a collage page with writing space. Here's the umbrella seller. Look at her sleeves. It's a closed umbrella. And I had this image from an 1800s newspaper supplement. It was a large cover image, and I shrank it down. I had the original of that. And I printed this from an old book. It's a little poem about little raindrops. I printed it onto a parchment paper, kind of a blue-gray parchment paper, and then inked it. And here is the toy seller. His body is made up of, or hers, I can't tell, it's made up of a shelf full of toys. And her hands are frog puppets. It's very cute. You'll have fun looking at all the details of these pictures, and also the ones that from Mrs. Coggs. You'll have to look at them a little closer because they're smaller, but it's fun to look at them and see what they're made out of. So here's the other umbrella side, and this Mrs. Coggs also has a set of digitals called Stormy Weather, and these images both came from that. And I happen to have an umbrella charm, so I attached it to that tag with some sari silk and a bulb pin. The wares maker, I just used this silver plated pitcher. Looks like he is full of pots and pans and things like that. And the wine maker. So we had the wine grower. This one is the wine maker. And I had one other stamp that had grapes. And to me it looks like a wine label. I think that's what it is. So I stamped it on a purple dyed paper. And here's the other side of the wigs, and there's a hair goods advertisement. Here we have the blacksmith. Look at the bellows on his back. And so I stamped on the background of this tag and then added these images that were cut from an antiques and collectibles book. And this is an iron hook and part of an iron weather vane. Here's the ribbon lady. Of course, her shoes look like ballerina shoes that are all laced up with ribbons. And the shoe seller. Oh, look what's on her feet. Shoes. And her shins are covered with upside down boots again. And this is an actual image from the 1912 catalog. And this is a digital that's printed from that catalog. I do have a digital set in my shop of shoes. Antique shoes. Oh, I want to glue this. This was a sticker and I stuck it down without thinking. I need to pull it off and add some glue behind it. And the third signature starts with the tailor. So I have a vintage cloth measuring tape piece there and just this little decorative medallion and a pair of scissors, a charm. And inside I made a tag with a little advertisement for the merchant tailor and dealer in ready-made clothing, hats and caps, and something about clothes and goods of all kinds. I covered up part of that. So I stamped this guy on a separate piece of paper and glued him down because he would have had this background speckly stuff where his face should have been. Would have looked like he had measles or something. And this page is just, it's at the end of the book, and it's a little boy carrying home all the stuff that he bought from all these vendors on Market Street. There's the tool maker, and I just had this image of a man who was making nails. This is from an 1800s catalog, I believe, or magazine. And I found these little tools. These are Stampin' Up! Charms that I've had for a while. And I'm glad I found them in time to put them in this book. I was looking for other charms today to see what I had for these vendors. This is the fisherman. And I cut these from the collage sheet that Cindy just sent me last week. I stenciled the little dots there to look like bubbles in the water. And the clock seller. So this is from an Antiques and Collectible book, and this is from the same book. And the bookseller. This one is the yarn seller. So I zigzag stitched a couple pieces of yarn across the top of this pocket, put a label on it, and then this is part of a yarn sample card. I put it in upside down because this is kind of bulky, so I put that outside of the pocket. See, it's got a big knot tied in the back. And I just folded the yarn over the card and tucked it in. And if you think it adds too much bulk to your book, you can certainly take it out and do something else with it. I like to use those in my domestic arts journals. And the Christmas tree seller. Wonder if she's selling the ornaments. Here's the other side of the yarn seller. So I just took some more yarn and made a little bow and glued it up there. We have the musician here. This is part of a music flashcard, and this is from a illustrated dictionary. And the perfumer. So I have this stamp of a little perfume bottle. I just stamped some background texture on it. I didn't put any more clock stuff over here. Oh, this one was fun. This is the Plume Master. So he's got plumes and feathers. And I have a lot of vintage hat images with fancy feathers. And this is the only tag I think that has a fluffy puller, whatever, fiber on it. I thought that went well with the feather theme. So I just stamped some flowers there and put this image in with this really pretty feather on her hat. And this lady is from the 1800s. This is not a digital. This is the actual image from the old magazine. And then this one is a digital. And I have the hats in my shop also. In my digital, it's I think it's called Hats and Accessories. So this is just a strip of the scrapbook paper that I folded and rounded the corners and just put her on there with the peacock feather, and you can open that up and write on it. There's the little boy taking all of his treasures home. And then the last page there. There's even a little tiny envelope there, and there is a tiny little card if you want to get it out. It's in there. I didn't put a pocket on the back cover because the book is already full enough. I just put the little emblem with my signature on it. And I have a hook fastener and a hair tie to hold it closed because it is quite fat. It wants to bounce open. Alright, so this is called The Professionals, and it is in my shop when this video goes up. There's a lot of work put into here, as you can see. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I did decide to put this in the shop. I was debating on whether to keep it myself or to put it in the shop, and I've decided to put it in the shop. So hopefully one of you would like to have this in your journal collection. So you can go over to the shop, which is in the, just follow the link below this video and it will take you to my shop. I thank you so much for your attention. This was kind of a long flip through because there were so many details, but I appreciate you sticking with me, and I will see you in the next video, and I hope you have a creative day today. Bye bye.